from the tomb. The guests strolled into the grand dining hall of the hotel and took their seats. The waiters moved slowly, serving everyone at a relaxed pace, giving those who were late time to arrive and saving themselves the trouble of bringing back the dishes later. The regular guests, the ones who came back year after year, watched the door carefully every time it opened, hoping to see some new faces. New faces! That was the only thing that really made things interesting at a resort. We went to dinner mainly to see who had arrived that day, to try to figure out who they were, what they did for a living, and what they were thinking. A kind of restlessness seemed to take over us, a longing for exciting adventures, maybe new friends, even a chance for romance. In this close-knit world, everyone we didn't know became super important. Curiosity was piqued, we felt extra sympathetic, and our social instincts went into overdrive. We might dislike someone for a week, be friends for a month, and we always looked at everyone with the special way of seeing things that only a resort can create. Sometimes, during a chat after dinner under the trees of the park, next to the bubbling spring, we'd meet someone incredibly smart and fascinating, only to forget all about them a month later. But it's also in these places where serious, lasting friendships are formed. We see each other every day, getting to know each other really quickly. The feeling of affection that grows so fast feels like a mix of the carefree way we act with old, trusted friends. Later, we remember those first moments so fondly. The first conversations we had. The first time we felt like we really saw each other's souls. The first glances that asked questions and answered unspoken thoughts and feelings. The first real confidences. The wonderful feeling of opening up to someone who seems to have completely opened up to you. The sameness of the days, the monotony of them being pretty much all the same, somehow makes the blossoming of a friendship even stronger. That evening, like every evening, we looked out for new faces. Only 2 people walked in, but they were very unusual. A man and a woman, father and daughter. They seemed to have stepped out of a strange, spooky story, and while there was something appealing about them, it was a bit unsettling, and I immediately thought they were probably unlucky in some way. The father was tall and thin, a bit stooped over, with hair that was completely white. It was too white for his face, which still looked young. He had the calm, serious way of someone who is very religious. You could see it in the way he held himself and even in how he dressed. The daughter was probably around 24 or 25 years old. She was very thin, almost frail, and her face was very pale, with a tired, lifeless look. She was one of those people you sometimes meet who seem too weak to handle the worries and work of life, too fragile to move around and do the things we all have to do every day. But even so, she was pretty, with a delicate beauty that was almost like a ghost. It was clear that she was the one who had come to drink the healing waters. By chance, they were seated right across from me. It didn't take long for me to notice that the father had a strange problem. Something wrong with his nerves, it seemed. Whenever he went to reach for something, his hand would twitch and jump, almost like it was fluttering, before he could grab what he wanted. After a while, it bothered me so much that I turned my head so I wouldn't have to look at it. But not before I noticed that the young woman kept her glove on her left hand while she ate. Dinner was over, and as usual, I went for a walk around the grounds of the hotel. It was like a park, stretching all the way to the little train station of Auvergne, Châtel-Guyon, tucked away in a valley at the foot of a tall mountain. From this mountain flowed the sparkling, bubbling springs, hot from an ancient volcano. Beyond us, there, the domes, small, extinct craters, where Châtel-Guyon began, rose up like jagged teeth above the long line of mountains. Beyond the domes, there were two very different landscapes. One with needle-like peaks, the other with bold, steep mountains. The air was warm that evening, so I just walked back and forth under the rustling trees. I enjoyed looking at the mountains and listening to the music coming from the casino, which sat on a little hill overlooking the park. Just then, I saw the father and daughter walking towards me. I gave them a polite nod, the kind of greeting you give other guests at a hotel in Europe. The man stopped right away. "Excuse me, sir," he said, "but could you tell us about a nice, short walk? Maybe something easy and pretty?" "Of course," I said, and offered to lead them to the valley where the river flows. It's a deep, narrow valley between two steep, rocky hills covered in trees. They agreed, and as we walked, we naturally started talking about the healing powers of the mineral water. I had guessed correctly. They were there for his daughter's health. "She has a strange illness," he explained, "and the doctors can't figure out what's wrong. She has these really strange nervous problems. Sometimes they say it's heart trouble, sometimes liver problems, and other times they think it might be her spine. Right now, they think it's her stomach, which controls and moves the whole body. They call it a protein disease because it can take so many forms and attack in so many ways. That's why we're here. Personally, I think it's her nerves. Whatever it is, it's very sad." This reminded me of his hand twitching. "Maybe it's something that runs in the family," I suggested. "Your nerves seem a little jumpy too, don't they?" "Mine," he answered calmly. "Not at all. I've always had very calm nerves." Then, as if remembering something, he said, "This," and he touched his hand, "isn't a nervous thing, but the result of a terrible shock I experienced. Imagine, sir, my own daughter was buried alive." I was speechless, surprised beyond words. "Yes," he continued, "buried alive. But listen to the story, it's not long. For a while, Giulietti seemed to have heart problems. We were sure it was a serious problem and feared the worst. Then one day, it happened. She was brought in, lifeless, dead. She had died suddenly while walking in the garden. Doctors came rushing over, but there was nothing they could do. She was gone. For 2 days and 2 nights, I stayed by her side myself, and it was my own hands that put her in her coffin. I followed it to the cemetery and watched as it was placed in our family vault. This all happened in the country, in the Lorraine region. I also wanted her to be buried with all her jewels, the bracelets, necklace, and rings, all gifts I had given her. And she was wearing her beautiful first ball gown. You can imagine, sir, how I felt when I went back home. She was all I had left. My wife had been gone for many years. When I got back, I was practically mad with grief. I locked myself in my room, fell into my chair, stunned, unable to move, just a miserable, breathing wreck. Soon my old valet, Prosper, who had helped me put Juliette in her coffin and lay her to rest, came in quietly to see if he could tempt me to eat. I shook my head, not saying a word. He tried again. "Monsieur is making himself ill. Will Monsieur allow me to help him to bed?" "No, no," I said. "Leave me alone." He gave up and left the room. I don't know how many hours passed. What a night! What a night! It was terribly cold, and the big fire in the fireplace had gone out long ago. The wind, a harsh winter blast, full of freezing cold, howled and screamed around the house, rattling my windows with a strange, scary sound. I sat still in the same place where I had collapsed, completely worn out and overwhelmed. My eyes were open wide, but my body felt weak, like it was dead. My soul was drowned in despair. Suddenly, the big bell in the house rang loudly. I jumped up so hard that my chair broke under me. The slow, solemn sound echoed through the empty house. I looked at the clock. It was 2 in the morning. Who could be coming at this hour? The bell rang sharply twice more. The servants would probably never answer. Maybe they wouldn't even hear it. I grabbed a candle and went to the door. I was about to ask, "Who's there?" But I was too embarrassed to sound so weak, so I gathered my courage and unbolted the door. My heart pounded, my pulse raced. I threw the door open with a jerk, and there in the darkness, I saw a figure that looked like a ghost, dressed in white. I stepped back, speechless with fear, stammering, Who are you?" A voice answered, "It's me, Father." It was my daughter, Juliet. I really thought I was going crazy. I shivered, backing away from the ghost as it moved closer. I even tried to wave it away with my hand. It's that gesture that I've never been able to forget. The ghost spoke again. Father, look, I'm not dead. Someone came to steal my jewels. They cut off my finger. The blood flowing made me come back to life." And then I saw that she was covered in blood. I fell to my knees, panting, sobbing, laughing, all at once. As soon as I got my senses back, but still so confused that I hardly understood how happy I was, I took her in my arms, carried her to her room, and rang frantically for Prosper to start a fire again, bring her a warm drink, and go get the doctor. He came running in, looked at my daughter in the chair for a moment, gasped in shock and horror, and fell back, dead. It was he who had opened the vault, who had hurt my daughter and stolen her jewels, and then left her there. He couldn't erase all traces of what he had done, and he hadn't even bothered to put the coffin back in its place. He must have been sure I wouldn't suspect him because I trusted him so much. We really are very unlucky people, sir. He stopped talking. Meanwhile, night had fallen, covering the still, lonely little valley in darkness. A kind of strange dread settled over me, looking at these unusual people. A dead person come back to life, and a father with his strange movements. "Let's go back," I said. "It's getting cold." Without saying anything, we walked back to the hotel together, and soon after that, I went back to the city. I never saw those 2 strange visitors to my favorite summer resort again. The end. If you like the story, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Was there anything that surprised you? Who's your favorite character in the story? I can't wait to hear your thoughts.